Hello and welcome. My name is Melinda Hart. You are watching Stamping with Hart. I am an independent demonstrator with Stampin Up, and what you are looking at here are the March 2024 Paper Pumpkin alternate card ideas. The March Paper Pumpkin kit is always one of the most popular, because March is Paper Pumpkin's birthday month and there's always a bonus stamp set included. So here is a closer look at the cards. Now, just for anybody who's new here, I just want to let you know when I work with alternate card ideas, it means that I'm using the Paper Pumpkin kit pieces in addition to other products. I bring in other products to work with the alternate cards, and I will let you know what those products are. But what you're getting a look at here are my alternate card ideas, which I loved them. And this is one of those if it isn't broke, don't fix it type alternate videos, because I actually did a similar thing with the Coffee with Friends stamp set with one of the nature theme kits that came out last year. And I thought, you know what, I'm going to bring them back in and see how it turns out. And like I said, if it isn't broke, don't fix it. I really loved this, even though it was a completely different color palette, even though it was a completely different type of nature landscape than the ones last year. It still fit in so beautifully, and it really speaks to the testament of a really good stamp set that captures feelings and emotions, and also the Stampin' Blends and how you can change, the images to fit any landscape or theme. Now, here is our upcoming 2024-2025 annual catalog. I can only show the cover, but the reason that I'm showing the cover is because it inspired one of the card layouts. Now, let's get into what's in the kit. This is the bonus stamp set. So for the March Paper Pumpkin kit every year to celebrate Paper Pumpkin's birthday, there are 2 stamp sets in the March kit. Traditionally, there are 1. This is the March Paper Pumpkin stamp set. This is the stamp set that I am going to be focusing on today, in addition to bringing in a couple of other stamp sets. That bonus floral stamp set I am going to save for a separate video, because I am going to be doing a completely different thing with that stamp set. I'm at least at this point, I'm not planning on pairing it with this particular kit. I'm going to use the Paper Pumpkin stamp set today, and then I'm going to bring in some other stamps, and we're going to save that bonus stamp set for different alternates in a separate video. So consider this part 1, and then we will also have a part 2 of alternates, since that stamp set was included in this month's kit. So here you are looking at the kit component pieces. I showed, coordinating envelopes. Here are the card bases. We have these iridescent, sequins with adhesive backing on them. There is gorgeous grape vellum elements here, layering elements, if you will, that you could use with this. We have instructions in here, Stampin' Dimensionals, adhesive dots. One of the most surprising things, here were the original kit design cards on the front of this instruction sheet. This was one of the most surprising things, was how thick and how large these pieces were, these wood elements that they included in this March Paper Pumpkin kit. I mean, first of all, there's 2 stamp sets in here. There's gold foiling elements, there's vellum in here, and then we have these gigantic, significant, over 3 inches, right? Wooden elements. And I thought, oh my gosh, this kit just keeps on going. But I really felt like, for me in particular, I did not want to make the original Paper Pumpkin design cards for this particular box, because the cards were completely different than what I had imagined. And that is because, oh, and here are some of our die cut pieces that we're going to be using to stamp some sentiments on. And it's always wrapped in tissue paper, and I always save the tissue paper. So that's just why you're seeing that. And then here is the instruction sheet. So sometimes I will do an unboxing for a paper pumpkin kit, and sometimes I'll put the kit cards together as the team designed them before I get into alternates, but that won't be the case with this month's kit. I did want to show you what the elements were because this month's kit coordinates with something called the Meandering Meadow Suite. This is the Garden Meadow dies that I'm pointing at right here. Garden Meadow is the bundle. So you could purchase either the bundle or the suite as an online exclusive. It launched, I think, in November of last year, November 2023. Now, what I want to show you here, because we're going to be using these today on the alternates, are these pieces from this set of dies that cuts into paper and creates these like grassy, grassy scenes almost. And it's going to be a very important part of the alternates for me. So in my mind, I knew even before I got this kit in the mail that I was going to be using the Meandering Meadow Suite to coordinate with this month's kit. Now, in addition to that, Stampin' Up! This year has started doing these add-on dies for the paper pumpkin kits. This is part of the Meandering Meadow Suite. I'm sorry to keep going back and forth with you. And there was a set of 3 different color glimmer papers, like glitter paper. And I wanted to show you the difference between that glitter paper and the vellum. To me, the Gorgeous Grape vellum, while very pretty, I thought was too dark. And I did find a way to use it in my alternates in a little bit of an unconventional way. But I wanted to pair it with a softer purple. Like for the alternates in my mind, I wanted to pair it with something softer. And I did want to show you what those glitter papers looked like in case you are interested in the Meandering Meadow Suite or the Garden Meadow bundle. I will be using almost all of the elements from the suite, including these embellishments. I will not be using the ribbon today, and I think that you guys will see why, but we are going to use the stamp set. We are going to use the dies. We are going to use the embellishments. I really wanted to make an effort not to use the designer series paper because we have these beautiful scenes on the cards. And luckily from Paper Pumpkin, they have started, in certain kits, they have started printing the image on both sides of the card base. It's like a continuous image, like, and it looks like a canvas, doesn't it? So I wanted to show you the card base versus the DSP to show you just how similar it is. It was like, I mean, oh my gosh, so I love that the DSP coordinates and could layer very well with the cards in this kit. We don't always get DSP that coordinates with Paper Pumpkin kits. So I thought, let me use the cards as much as I possibly can. And I did end up not using the DSP. And here is that Coffee with Friends stamp set. I will link to the other Paper Pumpkin alternate video where I used this stamp set. It was actually my most popular video last year. And I immediately thought of this stamp set when I saw the landscapes and what I wanted to do. And I also knew that this was going to pair beautifully with the Garden Meadow stamp set to make some really beautiful scenes on these alternate cards. And that was ultimately what I was going for with this particular set of alternate cards. Now, if you get the Paper Pumpkin stamp set and you just want to make the cards as they were designed, inside the kit with just those elements and not worry about anything else, that's totally fine. But when I get into alternates, I'm really trying to go to the next level of what you can do with a kit, particularly with other products that you may have in your collection. And then you want to take it to an even higher level when you know that Paper Pumpkin stamp set or the Paper Pumpkin kit elements coordinate with another suite or bundle. It's just fabulous. I love when we get the opportunities to do that. So what I'm doing here is I'm using Memento Tuxedo Black ink to stamp all of these images because I am going to color all of these images with Stampin' Blends. And I'm not doing anything crazy with techniques or anything like that today in terms of Stampin' Blends. I'm just trying to color these images so that they will be complementary to the landscape scenes and to the coordinating colors of the Paper Pumpkin kit. And there are two things that I typically do in an alternate video that I didn't do today. The first is that I usually create a visual, guide of the coordinating colors in the kit. There are a bunch, and I was very short on time. I was already delayed doing these alternates this video, so I just decided to jump in and I'll tell you the colors as I go. Now, these are the copper clay blends combo. These are not a coordinating color, but I wanted to add some warmth, like some natural wood tones, in the images that I colored. I incorporated it in just a couple of places. And then I started to layer the dark over it, nothing too crazy. So if it feels like it's not dark enough, sometimes I'll either grab a third color or I'll go back in and color it again with that same dark marker and kind of give it another layer. Now, Stampin' Blends, if you're not familiar, are alcohol-based markers, and they are specifically designed so that you can do this exact type of blending and shading and mix multiple colors endlessly if you would want to. And it's just very smooth and very beautiful. So that is Pebbled Path that I'm coloring her hair. Here I'm grabbing the ivory Stampin' Blend, and I like using ivory to age wood. It just kind of lightens it. You could use the color lifter too, but ivory has a little bit of a warmth to it. Now, Fresh Freesia is one of the coordinating colors in the kit, and Fresh Freesia is one of the colors I use the most for alternates in this video. So I did use Fresh Freesia Stampin' Blends. I used the Fresh Freesia cardstock. I used the Fresh Freesia ink. And then here, I think this blue was Night of Navy Light, but I use a bunch of blues, boho blue. I'm using the Natural Tone Stampin' Blends for all of the skin tones in the various cards that we're doing today. A little bit of boho blue, misty moonlight, just a combination of blues. There was no particular rhyme or reason. I wanted their outfits to blend in a certain way with, I could have done it the opposite where it stood out against the background, but I wanted to do shades that were similar. Granny Apple Green was another color that I used a lot for the alternates, and Granny Apple Green is one of the coordinating colors, as is Garden Green. I mean, you guys can tell just by the scenes on, printed on the card bases that there are a ton of colors. So you have a very wide range to work with. With the Natural Tone Blends, I use just about all of the colors. I'm not even kidding. Between the hair and their skin tones. So I would say I used the light combo, I used the medium combo, just on the different characters because I had to color these several times. But if you don't have the natural tone, Stampin' Blends, you could always use ivory or you could use petal pink for skin tone. Just did a bunch of different hair tones. So like I said, nothing too crazy, but what I did do with these alternates was I trimmed a lot of these card bases down. So instead of using the whole card base, I did use one card front at the actual size, which is 4¼ by 5½. But for the most part, these scenes are being trimmed down to 5¼ inches. And then we're going to add to the scene, okay? And then you can decide how you want to do this for your alternates. But for me, I really wanted to make this scene come to life. It's a beautiful scene all by itself, but I wanted to sort of add to it. And what I can tell you is these grass, that die cut that I just cut into the image, it's seamless. It's flawless in my opinion. I love the way that those blend together. Now, I did decide to fussy cut, And this is one of the rare occasions, and I think I did this last year in my alternates last year too. This is one of the rare occasions that I actually used a craft knife as well. You do not have to. You can just color in the whole bench if you do not want to get very detailed with a craft knife or fussy cutting. But I have to tell you, just for my own personal style of crafting, I live for this kind of detail when I can get away with it. Like if I have the time to do it, or if I know I'm going to sit down and really focus on a particular set of cards or alternates, which is what I really, really wanted to do with this, because I knew I was going to be using like 3 different elements to create these scenes. So I went in with my paper snips. These are my Stampin' Up! Scissors. They are fabulous detail scissors for fussy cutting if you don't already have these. And I'm just working my way around the image. I bring my craft knife in when it's time to cut between the slats. So anything that I couldn't get away with cleanly with my scissors, you know, in the crook of her arm, that was when I brought in my scissors. But one little trick for this, if you don't want to do that, is you could either color it completely in gray, just to kind of create a little bit of a shadow, or you could fill it with Pool Party so that it isn't just bright, bright white. There are a few different things you could do, but I knew I wanted to take that bench and I wanted to tuck them into it, as if that whole grassy area or that whole little nature scene, you know, had grown around the bench, and it was not, you know, perfectly manicured. It was a little bit wild, and they were just sitting in that scene. And I absolutely loved the way that that turned out. So I am going to end up using dimensionals to kind of pop up and separate the die cut section of that scene that we just cut into. And that's one of the great things about those little border dies that I was using that creates that little grassy look, is that they cut into, but they don't necessarily cut out a whole piece. And they can really add so much depth to the projects that you're making. So I can't recommend the Garden Meadow bundle enough. It just really has so much character to it. And you can build these scenes in so many different ways. Now for our card bases, we are taking Fresh Freesia cardstock 8.5 by 11. We are cutting it in half, so at the 4 1/4 inch mark, and then we are scoring it at the 5.5 inch mark. And this is the card base that I used for all of my alternate cards today. Sometimes I'll really change it up and I'll bring in all these different coordinating colors. But I really liked this. I liked the way that Fresh Freesia looked with everything. Every single one of the card scenes that I, you know, trimmed in half from the card bases. And so what I did was, once I decided to go with Fresh Freesia as my card base, I just basically trimmed these scenes down to 4 by 5 1/4. And just depending on how I was trying to preserve the scene, I would just trim around all the edges until I got to that measurement. But yeah, so you guys will see here the way that this comes together, like the way that they have Fresh Freesia just sort of popped in there, like in the skyline and in the flowers. I just thought it was a great match. And then of course, I love that, you know, we have that with her top too. So I'm going to come in with the Stampin' Seal Plus first. You could also use your regular seal. And then I left the area where we cut that die in open, meaning that there's no adhesive on that yet, because I'm going to put dimensionals under there to try to lift that bottom part that I cut up a little, so that we can sort of accentuate it, so that you can notice it a little bit more, and so that we could tuck that bench in there so it looked like that field had like grown around the bench. Now, this stamp set is the stamp set from the March Paper Pumpkin kit. This is the stamp set that would have come in the kit regardless of the bonus stamp set. And it is a combination of sentiments, and I think there's just one image on this particular stamp set, a flower image, and I think the rest are phrases or greetings. And then I am taking a look at, this is something I do often when I'm making alternates, is I'll grab these die cut pieces that came in the kit, and I'll just start playing with them and just seeing how each one of them looks on the card before I decide which one I'm going to use. This was the one that I went with. I loved this one. And then we're going to stamp our greeting on this, and we're going to add this above the girls onto our card. And then you could, you know, play with the inks and see what you like. I thought that Fresh Freesia was going to be a little bit too light, and because Fresh Freesia is the base, I decided to go with the Garden Green ink for this one, so that that phrase or that greeting would really stand out. Now, I have two sets of embellishments here. I have the embellishments from the Paper Pumpkin kit, which is those, they were almost see-through, but they were like this soft, iridescent, matte sequin. They were a little bit unusual, like they weren't as sparkly as typical sequins would be. And I felt like they were very subtle, like on the actual project. So I put a bunch of them on there so that if you were to receive this card in person, you would see that sparkle like once you went to look up close to it. So I just kind of popped them in the field almost as if they were flowers. So there's a bunch of them on the bottom there. And then I'm bringing in the second pack of embellishments, which came as part of the Meandering Meadow Suite. It's a combination of birds and dragonflies, and they are a matte gold and they are very flat. So if you are somebody who likes flat embellishments, then consider adding these as an alternate because they fit perfectly with these cards. Now, this insert is also 4 by 5¼ inches. This is just basic white cardstock. And then I'm using the Fresh Freesia ink on the inside of the card. There is the single flower image from the March Paper Pumpkin stamp set on the original stamp set. And then the bonus stamp set is all floral. But again, we're just using that one stamp set in this particular video, and I'm just adding it here into the card with another one of the greetings or one of the phrases for the inside, "You've been on my mind," to complete this card. So while I don't show decorating the inside of all of the cards, I did want to show it with at least one card, and then that was how this one turned out. So I absolutely loved it. Okay, so here we're going to be getting into this again. Now, I always create, or I should say most of the time, I create these reference sheets with my dies. And the reason that I do that is so that it can help me as a design element, right? So ignore the fact that this is a pecan pie. I'm just using it to gauge sizing and if I want to use this die on these cards. And you will see, not only did I use the die, I went a little bit crazy with it, but I really loved the way that it turned out. So this girl on the steps, I have to say, is probably one of my favorite images that I've used in stamping and that I've colored. I have used her in so many different videos and on so many different card projects, and I have colored her in so many different color like configurations. But for some reason, the sizing of her is just so perfect inside these scenes that are created, like these landscaped scenes. And the sizing of this particular image is also perfect in terms of the scale of the Garden Meadow stamps. So, for example, she is the right size for the wheelbarrow. She is the right size for the basket of flowers. She is the right size to hold the shovel. I'm trying to think of what the real name of it is. You guys can tell I'm not a gardener. So this was me incorporating that gorgeous grape vellum. On the original design cards, you know, sometimes they knock it out of the park, and I love it. And sometimes I just feel like it doesn't fit. And I felt like Gorgeous Grape didn't fit. And I was like, how can I make this Gorgeous Grape vellum fit into my alternate? Like, how can I use this creatively? I didn't want to just plunk the square or the rectangle down, you know. So what I decided to do, I stamped the image in Stays On ink. I'm only focused on her shirt, and I thought I'm going to paper piece this, and I'm going to see how this looks. So the reason that I use Stays On ink is because it's hard to stamp onto vellum and the ink not smudge, but Stays On won't smudge. But just to be sure, I hit it with the heat tool to make sure that it didn't smudge before I, move forward. The other thing about this vellum that is unusual from regular vellum is that it's almost opaque, meaning you can't really see the adhesive on the back of it. That is how dark it is. So I thought to myself, let me see if I can use these little adhesive dots from the kit. And I could. So I ended up paper piecing the shirt in that dark purple, that gorgeous grape purple vellum. And I loved it. I loved the way that it looked. It added so much, I thought, to her, like to the stamped image and to the scene. So that was really cool. And it did bring in that element of purple without it being like Like when you get one of these cards from me, I would want you to notice the entire scene. I would want you to notice the card. I would want you to notice the scene within the card. Like, I would want you to see all of that artwork. And what was happening to me when I was looking at the paper pumpkin design cards, my eye would go straight to that purple. It kept going straight to the gorgeous grape vellum. And I guess it was just like a personal design difference, right? It was just a personal design thing. Her jeans that I'm coloring, by the way, are in light boho blue. I love that color for jeans. Just wanted to shout that out. I'm going to bring in the darker boho blue to kind of give a little bit of shading there, but just wanted to mention it because I love the way that that looks. And that's the light combo for her skin tone, by the way. And then I used like warmer brown tones for her hair. Okay, but back to this. So the one thing that I would do differently than from what you're seeing me do film-wise is I would have fussy cut her out entirely before I would have put the paper piece on. I'm not sure why I did that. I can't really explain it, but it just fits right in. It looks great. It's rich in its tone. It looks real as a shirt. It has a little bit of a different like texture to it, a little bit of a sheen to it. So it helps her stand out from the scene, in my opinion. But she also blends in with the scene. So we're not going to be focusing on the stairs, and we're not going to keep that steam that's coming out of the coffee cup. We're going to trim all of that off. It's just going to be her for this particular scene and for this particular card. But before we get into that, I am going to be using a combination of browns, just whatever browns you have. For me, it was a combination of the natural blend, like tones and like the mid-tone levels. I used a little bit of crumb cake, a little bit of ivory. I kind of brought in a couple of different colors there to use to kind of color in this gate. And so this brown isn't as red as copper clay is. So again, as I was playing with the different elements and the different colors of wood, I thought about doing it in white. I thought about doing it in gray. And I thought I really wanted to keep that natural, like brown look. But sometimes when you're designing cards, they don't come together the way that you think that they will. And then another one comes together in a minute, right? So it's a lot like piecing together a puzzle. So I would just recommend getting, all of your stamps out. Just stamp them. Just stamp them on a piece of white, basic white cardstock. And then just start coloring. Just start playing around with it. Just start coloring, seeing how it comes together. If you like it, cut it out with a coordinating die. And then take those pieces, think of them as a puzzle, and just start switching them in and out and seeing how they look in the scene. Does it look good? Does it look natural? Do you want to fussy cut it any further? Do you want to cut out the slats with a craft knife? Do you want to just leave it as it is? And you can play with those elements. But I have to say that I had so much fun. Like, I really thoroughly enjoyed and like took the time with the alternates in this particular video. And for the sake of time, I just kind of jumped ahead a little bit because you get the idea with fussy cutting. The other one, I wanted to focus on the whole image because I had to use the craft knife and I wanted you to see how I did that. But with her, I don't think you need to see me fussy cutting the entire image. And I also, didn't color every single image on camera. I did try to include some of it so that you got the idea. And of course, you could just, go through your blends and the coordinating colors. And that's basically the way that I did it. And you just use whatever combinations work best for you. You can customize the girl to look like the person you're sending the card to, and just color coordinate it that way. So whatever works best for you. And so here, as we're taking a look at the elements, what I really wanted to do was I wanted to have her sitting on the gate. In the last year's video, I have her propped up on a rock. And in this video, in this like card, I was like, I want to prop her up on the gate. I thought that would have looked so cool, right? And so I am grabbing the different card bases from the kit and I'm trying to see which scene I like her best in sitting on the gate. And sure enough, this die cut was it. I was like, this is fabulous, right? So again, ignore the pecan pie. We're not going to use that. It's literally just a reference so that I can see if I want to use it on the card. So I did do a fun technique with that die and these cards. One of the great things about the scene being on both sides of the card bases and having multiple card bases is that you have the freedom to cut these multiple times if you want, or layer them, and they will look fantastic. So over there next to that tree, there's like a dark area there, and I ended up propping her up just on that because I was like, I really like her in this scene by the water, but I didn't want to overcomplicate it, right? I didn't want to throw a bunch of things in there that wouldn't have naturally have been there, wouldn't have looked right, right? So I wanted it to look like she came down to the water to just kind of chill out and have her morning coffee or tea. And then this is gorgeous grape ink with that greeting, the longer greeting, and then a die cut from the kit. And I was just trying to figure out the placement. I don't like to cover the trees if I can help it, but there's so much tree in this particular card base that I thought it's okay if I get it right up at the top. And I did pop this up on dimensionals. I did decide to do that. And then we're going to bring our embellishments back in again. And since she is by a water source, I decided to use the dragonflies. So you could use as many or as few as you want. And then I was also putting the sequins on here, and I ended up not loving the way that I arranged them. So I just kind of fixed them up real quick and then moved on to the next card. Okay, and so here I am using the regular size Stampin' Cut and Emboss machine with this die. We're going to cut out this image and we're going to layer it right back into the scene. We're just going to lift it off a little bit, and then you can see the stamped image of the girl off to the side. I'm not going to be showing coloring her again. I do a different configuration of colors, but you know, we've already explained and gone through that, so I didn't feel like I needed to show it again. And again, this die is from the Garden Meadow dies, or the Meandering Meadow Suite. We're going to put those two pieces aside. We'll come back to that. And then we're actually going to cut out the gate. So there are two different die cuts for the gate in the Garden Meadow bundle. There is the one that you stamp and then you color in and you can cut out the outline. And then there's this one where you don't need a stamp. It just cuts out a gate. And I wanted to see what they both looked like. I wanted to check and see which one I liked better. So that's why you see me cutting that out, but I didn't actually end up using it. But what I wanted to show you on the alternate video is look at how beautifully that fits in terms of its sizing. It is a perfect fit, but there's so much detail to the stamped version that we die cut that was the one that I decided to go with for this particular card. Now, I will be completely honest with you. I do not typically work with wood elements. I do not typically put them on a card. If I was going to use a wood element, I would most likely put it on a gift tag, or embellish a gift with it, like a wrapped gift, and just make it really fancy. But I did want to try to incorporate one tree because it is very three-dimensional. They're very thick. And I ended up doing a technique with this, like I had done on a previous video that I will link if you're interested in seeing it. One of my most popular techniques, but unfortunately people didn't like the speed of the video. So that was a lesson learned. But all I'm doing is I'm taking the tree stamp from the Grassy Grove stamp set, and I am just stamping it in different greens to create a textured tree look. Now I will say that on the wood elements, even though it did come across like it did work, if you moved it, like you could smear it, like you could smudge or smear it. And the minute I noticed that, I thought, you know what? Let me hit it with the heat tool so that I can make sure that this ink is dry. I'm not used to working with wood elements, and I don't know if I'm going to use them on any other of the cards. I just felt like they were too big, but it was a nice size with this particular stamp. And so I thought I'll have her sitting like in front of that and just see how that looks. And it puts a tree on the other side of this image, that we just die cut. And I thought that looked really cool. So I was really happy with that. I just used my Stampin' Seal Plus on the back of it. Stampin' Seal Plus, I feel like, is a little bit stronger. Like whenever you're working with like a something that's unusual or something that might need a little bit of a stronger bond. I tend to use Seal Plus all the time anyway, but I would definitely specifically use it for this. So here you can see me just building out my scene and trying to see where I would like this tree best. What I will say is I popped her down, and then I needed to put dimensionals on the gate so that I could have her sit like propped up and sitting on it. So I kind of did it backwards where I put her there first. And she just looks like she's floating in air. And then I kind of tucked the gate under her. And I love, love, love the look. So you can see that tree is a great, great fit, that wood element shaped tree against the printed or painted trees that are on the card base image from the kit. It ended up looking so cool. It ended up being one of my favorite cards. Okay, and then here I am taking the Fresh Freesia ink with just one of my little sponge daubers. You can get a little set of 5 of these little sponge daubers that can really come in handy. And I'm just shading in some Fresh Freesia. And while this looks very, very subtle when you're seeing this, when we put the other piece over top of it, it does create a little bit of contrast between the background and the foreground. And that was what I was going for, just a little bit of a shadow. If you wanted to be more pronounced or more prominent, you could use a blue, or you could use Highland Heather, one of the, that's like a medium tone purple, but I wouldn't go so far as, Gorgeous Grape unless you were going to do it like very soft. But I loved the way that looked. It just had like a really soft airbrushed look about it, and it matched right with the tone and the artwork from whoever designed Meandering Meadow and whoever designed Memorable Meadows Paper Pumpkin Kit. Okay, and then I used the Thinking of You greeting from the Coffee with Friends stamp set, and now I'm finishing up with these flat bird embellishments for this particular scene, and I am going to bring in a couple of the sequins as well. And so as I am finishing up this card, I want to talk briefly about the upcoming Paper Pumpkin kits. Oh, I'm sorry, it wasn't the sequins. We're going to be using these purple shimmer gems, 3 different shades of purple. They are beautiful, and they had a really nice pop with this paper. So if you have those on hand, I would recommend these. They show up really beautifully on the lighter part of the DSP. And for those of you who like to cut up envelopes and use it as DSP, cut up the liners, it would go really well on there as well. I did not use liners as DSP for these particular alternate cards, but you certainly could. So I believe that the Memorable Meadows Paper Pumpkin Kit will go a long, long way in terms of alternate projects and ideas, particularly if you have the coordinating Meandering Meadow Suite or paper products. Okay, so let's talk about the next quarter of Paper Pumpkin Kits and how to become a subscriber, and then also the add-on dice that we have coming up. So April's kit, you need to be subscribed by April 10th. So I am doing the voiceover on this on April 5th. It will probably publish today as well. I just wanted to show you guys the depth and the thickness of that wooden element and how it turned out in the end on the card. Isn't that beautiful? I absolutely love the way that card turned out, especially her sitting on the gate. I just thought that added so much character. But for the April Paper Pumpkin Kit, you need to be a subscriber, Paper Pumpkin subscriber, by April 10th if you want the Delicate Wings Paper Pumpkin Kit. And then we also have 2 kits coming up for May and June. May is the best there is, and June's kit is called Life is Sweet. And the June kit is going to feature our brand new upcoming In Colors 2024-2026 In Color collection. So that'll be awesome. Now, every quarter, every 3 months, Paper Pumpkin comes out with a set of dies that will coordinate with that quarter's kit. So for the next 3 kits, we have the Thanks and Beyond add-on dies. They're available only while supplies last. And if you are interested in subscribing to Paper Pumpkin, you can head to paperpumpkin.com. I would love to earn your business as your demonstrator if you do not already have a demonstrator, so that you can start getting your Paper Pumpkin kits. And you can reach out to me anytime if you would like more information as to how to subscribe. I also have quick links on my blog for you to go and sign up with me as your demonstrator if you are interested in a Paper Pumpkin subscription. I do alternate projects with Paper Pumpkin every month. Okay, and so if you are still with me, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to be here in this video with me. Not many people make it this far or this long, but I just enjoy longer content videos, so I keep putting them out because I know that there are some of you who do like to sit and, craft along with the video or get ideas. Now, for coloring these baskets, I used Bubble Bath, the Stampin' Blends combo. I used Granny Apple Green, and then I'm bringing in the Copper Clay combo for the color of the basket itself. And as we get into coloring the wheelbarrow, we're going to use a little bit more of a multicolor look like they have in their color palette there, looking at that flowery field. So basically, I was going for a pink, a blue, a purple, and a green. So I did a combination of Bubble Bath, Fresh Freesia, a tiny bit of Tahitian Tide, and then I even brought in a little bit of Orchid Oasis. Tahitian Tide and Orchid Oasis are outgoing in colors. They're going to be retiring this year, so I probably won't be working with those colors much longer. But if those are colors or things that you want, I would definitely check out the Last Chance items, the Last Chance list. So here I'm using the dark Granny Apple Green just to create sort of the greenery around our flowers before I bring in our Orchid Oasis. And just another reminder here, as we are coming up on April 9th soon, April 9th will start the Last Chance sale. I did send out the lists on my email today, and if you have not gotten that, let me know. I can always send the Last Chance list to you if you need them, but it will give you a chance to prepare for the sale before it launches, and then the Last Chance items will be on sale from April 9th until April 30th. Our brand new 2024-2025 annual catalog will launch on May 1st, 2024. So now I'm using the Smoky Slate combo to color the outside part of the wheelbarrow. And then I'm even going to bring in a little bit of gray granite. I'm going to use just a teeny tiny bit of the color lifter. I'm going to bring in my Stampin' Right marker in black to color the wheel. I just like the saturation of the black on that. Even though I do partially cover the wheel when I actually put it into the card, but I still like to color everything because you never know with the way that you position, all of the different pieces and elements as they come together. You never know exactly how it's going to look until you sort of piece it together and do that. But I thought that this actually turned out really well. While I won't say that I do like tons of techniques, I was trying to do like a little bit of a dark and a light, a little bit, trying to make it look a little bit metallic without making it shiny, if that makes sense. Now for the gardening can or the watering can, we're going to do the same thing. And the reason why I'm leaving that little spot of white is to make it look like there's light reflecting off of the metal. So I'm coming in with the darker grays on the outside, and then kind of walking in the middle tone grays, the light grays, and I'm trying to leave that little bit of white. And then sometimes I come in with the color lifter to just sort of smooth it out. And then I was happy with the way that that looked too. I mean, you can definitely get more detailed with that, but it really helps you achieve like a really cool result with this. I just can't recommend the Stampin' Blends enough. If you get Paper Pumpkin kits on a regular basis, I think that they're really going to come in handy for your alternates and your future, card making needs. Okay, so now we're getting into a little bit more of the die cutting. So there are coordinating dies for most of the images in the Meandering Meadow Suite or in the Garden Meadow Bundle, just depending on what you're calling it. And even though this looks gigantic, this is actually my mini Stampin' Cut and Emboss machine. This is the one that I actually prefer working with on my table, just because it's a smaller footprint, takes up less space. And I was able to cut a lot of these images with my mini. Now, this particular die was actually from the the add-on dies for the first 3 months of the year worth of kits. It was called the Love of Spring dies. I am not sure if they're still available or not. You could always check in the store, but you need to be an active Paper Pumpkin subscriber if you want to purchase add-ons, refills, or past Paper Pumpkin kits. And every single one of those things is a perk of being a Paper Pumpkin subscriber. So I'm cutting this out in Granny Apple Green cardstock. I didn't have a certain number in mind. I just wanted to cut out a bunch of them. Remember when I said that the cover of the new catalog had inspired one of my card designs? I had this original thought that I was going to do all of my edging with this die, which I feel like is a really close match to the imagery that they have on the front of the catalog, the shiny parts that look like leaves. But it didn't quite work out that way when I was putting my card together. So you'll see what I mean when I'm like piecing this together, but I love the way that I ended up doing it, where it's kind of poking out from behind the die. But it ended up being a really cool look. So we're doing the girls on the bench again, and then we're tucking them into this piece. And we're experimenting just a little bit with the greeting and how we want to put like our sentiment on the front. And so this is me testing this out. This is a die cut from the kit, which I thought was so cool. And I just wanted you guys to see that it actually lines up beautifully. It's the same shape and it's within that sizing of the die from Meandering Meadow. So just wanted to let you know that, or Garden Meadow dies is technically what they're called. So that's a really cool element in the kit, but I didn't want to cover up the sky. So I took my Garden Green ink and I ended up stamping Heartfelt Thanks, which is a stamp from the Paper Pumpkin kit, directly onto the paper. And I like that look better. That way we don't sacrifice the sky. We don't cover up all that space. Now I had used one of those landscape, those edging dies here, but I hadn't cut it deep enough. So I just took my scissors to just kind of snip a little bit further over toward the edge so that I could fit my bench in there. And then we're just going to line this up. And oh, one thing that I did do, you don't have to do this, but I decided to add a little bit of a two-tone look to these die cuts. So I took another sponge dauber with my Garden Green ink, and I just it was like in a messy way. There was no rhyme or reason to it. I was just trying to add a little bit of dimension and a little bit of like a two-tone look to these, just to kind of make them look a little more artsy, like the way that the paper is designed, or I should say the way that the card bases are designed. And I thought it actually looked really cool. So I don't do that all the time, but that was actually a lot of fun and it was really quick and easy to do. So here I'm trying to get my layout. And originally I was like, well, maybe I can make it like a trellis, maybe I can make it like go around like ivy or something like that. But they were too big. It was too big. It started to cover up the sentiment. It started to cover up the coloring that I had done on the girls. So I was like, what if I put it behind it? What if it was like poking out? And I thought that was so beautiful. So that was what I went with. I went with that instead, and it adds some greenery and it adds like it breaks up the the sky. So if you don't want that there, you would have a continuous sky look. It would almost blend right in, but this kind of creates a little bit of contrast there and puts some visual interest behind it, which I thought was really cool. And there was a little bit of a tie-in with the Garden Green and the Heartfelt Thanks stamp that we just stamped. So I'm gonna just jump ahead. I'm basically just putting the little adhesive dots on here, but let's go ahead and take a look at what the card looks like. So here was how I ended up arranging them. I used 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I used 5 of the die cuts and just kind of put them in this like little bit of an arch, if you will, that's going to go behind this. And so we're going to pop this whole piece up on dimensionals. And then you'll see we'll finish up with a couple of embellishments here. But again, I absolutely love the way this turned out. And I did just want to point out here, the bottom looks like it's a continuous thing, it adds dimension to it. I just think it's so cool. But I also colored in the bench, so there was no cutting with a craft knife on this particular card. And then we're just finishing up with our embellishments. And as we jump into our last card here, you can see that the coloring has already been done. And I also stamped and colored a little shovel I can't think of what the technical word is for that. For those of you who are watching the gardeners, let me know. There's a name for this little thing. But I wanted to put this in her hand instead of the coffee cup. So I wanted to try to create a scene that looked like she had been out picking wildflowers, and she had a wheelbarrow and a basket because she couldn't fit another thing in that wheelbarrow. You see how overflowing and full it is. So I got pretty creative with this one. This is where all of the coloring with the Stampin' Blends pays off. So I had colored in this girl off camera, and I wanted her to have a place to sit. And I actually thought, what if it looked like it was a bucket turned upside down instead of a watering can? And I loved it. It was perfect, because it wouldn't be like unusual for her to have that inside the wheelbarrow, and then, just to carry extra things back with her if she needed to, and could just hang it right on the wheelbarrow. So I thought that's cool. She would turn it over when she needed a break or if she wanted to sit down. So the colors that I did for her clothing were actually shaded spruce in crumb cake light to try to make like a khaki pant look. And I felt like shaded spruce wasn't right. So I actually go over the shirt again with granny apple green just to kind of get those greens. Like I felt like that green was off, like it didn't go with the background. And that's unusual. And then I used basic black for her hair. And then here, I'm just trying to get the layout, like I'm just trying to get the look, but you can see everything's like kind of like flat and in a row, and it's kind of like piling on top of each other. And I thought that looks a little bit messy. But what if I took that third, I keep wanting to say a tree line, but that's wrong, like like almost like a grass line, or like a lawn line, a little bit of a landscaped kind of a look. I was like, there are three different ones that cut them in, and I had used two, and I was like, what if I use the third one? The other thing that I got a little bit creative with on this one was, and I had done this on a different video, where there's a pair of rain boots, and I had stamped and colored the rain boots off camera in Misty Moonlight. And then I stamped it twice, I colored it twice, and then I used the front boot to create two separate boots, because if you look at the stamped image, it's just half of the second boot. So I got this die out, and this is the real spooky, like it's like real spooky grass, like tall, dramatic grass. It's spiky and it's cool. And I thought this might not fit, with a flowery field, but it actually looked great. So I was really happy with it. So I'm die cutting that off camera, but I took these two boots, I fussy cut them out. You can also cut them out with a coordinating die, but I needed to cut two of the same boot so it looked like she's wearing two boots. And I kind of trimmed her feet off because it doesn't line up right if you try to cover her foot with the boot, and just kind of did my own thing. So it looked like she was walking through this field because she knew she was going to have a lot of dirt and get muddy. But how much cooler, and this is just my opinion, but how much cooler does that wheelbarrow look when it looks like it's tucked in the tall grass? Is that like the coolest thing? I just think that adds so much texture and fun. They're very understated dies. You would almost pass them up, but they add so much to a scene. And now here she is tucked behind some of the tall grass. And I mean, you can, arrange this however you would want, but she's picked a ton of flowers. She's taken a break. She's got her garden boots on, right? So I am just putting a little adhesive dot on and then adding these boots. And so you can do the lineup and see where the foot starts to poke out and just trim it off. That's basically what I did. And I didn't want to cover up her pant cuff. So she ends up looking like she has super long legs with these boots. And you could even trim the boots down if you wanted to. But you can have a lot of fun. I just think that Garden Meadow pairs so beautifully with Coffee with Friends. But I would actually like to get more stamp sets that have people in it, so that I could have a little bit more fun with these scenes. I adore creating these scene cards. And I hope that comes through when you guys are watching the video. So once I got my placement down of everything, then I decided to, glue everything down. And this is a personal choice. You can stop with the girl and the wheelbarrow. You don't have to add the basket. But I had already colored in the baskets, and I thought I'll save one for another project, but I am going to pop a basket on here too, because if she's hiking out into the field, she might want to do it all at one time and then not have to do it again, right? So I thought, I don't think that that's unusual. I think that maybe she would have like a whole abundant pick of the field or the wildflowers before she would go back home. So you can have her sitting there with the cup of coffee, but since I already have 3 or 4 cards where they're sitting there enjoying coffee, I thought this would be so fun to put a gardening tool in her hand because, again, the sizing is right. Like the sizing fits, in my opinion. So I'm just putting the wheelbarrow down. You could just use your regular Stampin' Seal for this, but I just had my Stampin' Seal Plus out. I use my Stampin' Seal Plus a lot. And then I'm just going to tuck that in behind the grass. And she is actually up on dimensionals. So you have some that are flat to the card, some that are on dimensionals. And then we're going to add in that basket. And I did end up using each style of die cut in the kit. So I had used the two, like the long thin one that looked like a banner, and I had used almost like it was sort of rounded and rectangular, and then I do get to use that rounded like it's almost like a half circle or like almost kind of like a half oval on this particular card. And I tried to use all of the stamps from the Paper Pumpkin kit. And when I say all of the stamps, I mean from the Paper Pumpkin stamp set, that extra bonus floral stamp set that was put in there for this, Paper Pumpkin's birthday. I did not use those stamps today, and I'm going to use those in a separate video. I'll do another alternate video exclusively with that stamp set. It's going to be a different thing because it doesn't have to particularly pair with this Paper Pumpkin kit. So I am going to do something different with that stamp set, and then I'll just call that, alternates part 2. So just trying to find some placement for the basket, and then we're going to finish up our card here. Okay, friends, so this concludes our Paper Pumpkin alternates for the March Paper Pumpkin Kit Part 1. I will have a Part 2 coming out soon. I hope that you enjoyed today's card ideas. There are a few things that you can do to really help the channel. Number one, if you like seeing alternate Paper Pumpkin projects, please like the video because that tells YouTube that you like what you're seeing, and it will push it out to more people. Subscribing is even better. That's also a great signal for YouTube. Or if you share the video, if you love it, please share it. It really helps to get the word out. And leave me a comment. Let me know which card was your favorite. Have you created any alternate cards from your March Paper Pumpkin kit, or do you have Meandering Meadow? Just leave me a comment and let me know maybe which one you liked best. Or let me know if you want to see future Paper Pumpkin videos, because that really, really goes a long way for helping me figure out the best videos and the best cards to help inspire all of you. So have a wonderful day, and I will see you again soon. Again, if you want to subscribe to Paper Pumpkin, please reach out to me. I will have my email in the description box below, as well as the videos, the other videos that I had used Coffee with Friends with as well, if you want to see that. All right, bye-bye.